Well, a great number of people have been talking about and learning more about a particular young man this week. Maybe you are among them, trying to gather as much information about this young man as possible, because he's being honored posthumously from many places and by passionate voices. His words and his memory are being used to promote particular views and values from within a particular tribe of people. He was first noticed at a young age. People around him listened to him and told others about him. Then his voices and thoughts were amplified because of the internet. And here are some of the things that he said. Everyone is born original, but most end up dying as photocopies. We are all likely to fall short because as soon as someone says something we don't like, we instantly grow angry. Our lives will truly be beautiful only if we discover how to love God above all things and our neighbors as ourselves. God is always with us and will never abandon us. How can people grasp this truth? Throngs of people stand in lines to buy tickets to rock concerts or soccer matches, but I don't see crowds of people lined up outside church. Well, this young person's presence grew, and people started to say the things that he said, especially young people who felt an affinity for the things that he said and the ways that he said these things. He was born on May 3rd, 1991 in London, and just a few months later he moved with his parents to Milan. He was diagnosed with leukemia as a teenager and died in 2006 when he was 15 years old. And this week, he became the first millennial saint in the Roman Catholic Church. Maybe you've been listening, maybe you've been following Saint Carlo Acutis. As a young child, he loved to pray the rosary, and after his first communion, he loved to talk about the Eucharist, about communion, about the presence of Jesus in it, the tiny bit of bread and wine, and the expansive presence of Jesus. He asked his parents if he could go to Mass every day because he wanted to taste again and be reminded that the holy was inside of him. He was a faithful friend. At school, he stood up for kids that were being bullied, especially kids with disabilities. And when a friend's parents were going through a divorce, Carlo made sure that he could be with his family and have a special place in their life. He played a lot of video games, we're told, and his mother says that he loved Nintendo and Game Boy and a Cube and PlayStation and Xbox, but he had conversations with the people that he was gaming with about the importance of being a person of faith and being present in the life of the church. And he limited his video game playing to no more than 2 hours a week. He was a computer whiz, taught himself some basic coding, and with some support from others, he opened up an exhibition on Eucharistic miracles, so miracles that have happened at the table. And he published those on the internet, and people watched those and thought about the Eucharist and Jesus's presence in their lives. And he became a saint this last week. Some things that I think about when I hear the story of young Carlo have to do with you can use technology for the common good. You can use technology to bring people together, to connect them and educate them, and to empower them, to help them feel like they belong, that they matter, that they are part of the whole, that they are a piece, but they're a part of the whole. Carlo's story reminds us that we can't stereotype young people as passive or apathetic, but we have to listen to our children, our young people. And Carlo recognized when people were being marginalized. The kids at school who were being bullied, the kid in his neighborhood whose parents were splitting up. Some people need another place to go, to be safe, to be seen, to be heard, to be loved. And the fact that he has become a saint reminds us that saints are not just the people that wear long robes, that have an audience, that have gone through certain experiences of their lives, that have certain background or education. Saints are every single one of us if we listen to the holy and we echo the words and ways of Jesus. And so we can learn a lot about this particular young man as he followed in the ways of the holy, as he found, even in his illness, a way to bring people together and a way to encourage people through technology. So a few days ago, I got an email from someone at Sheремeth, a Reformed Jewish synagogue up the street, with whom we have a wonderful partnership. And they asked me if I would answer a questionnaire for Pastor Freddie. Pastor Freddie is someone that got connected through the temple because years ago, through the International Institute, they hosted a family from the Congo. And Pastor Freddie was part of the church that embraced this family from the Congo. He's now in seminary, and so he has this project about technology. And he's supposed to interview a lot of clergy in St. Louis to talk about the impact of technology, positive ways and negative ways, in the church. And so I was happy to talk about our monitors, about One Church, woohoo! Anybody? About all the ways that we use technology. And he invited us to think about technology as phones and computers and cars and airplanes and the internet. So all kinds of things that have come into practice. And I talked a little bit about how I can't imagine being the church without the technologies that we have today. Even though some of them sometimes are frustrating, we might feel limited by them, they actually free us up to be able to do ministry because of all the shortcuts they offer to us and all the ways that we can reach out to each other in ways that we could not do that before. We don't know exactly who's watching us on YouTube, but we know week after week there are people out there. Our reach is wider, and people who aren't able to come, who live nearby, are able to continue to participate and be a part of the things that we're doing. And technology has limits and some negatives. Some of you have seen that in our local schools, they no longer are allowing cell phones during the school day because studies have shown that they distract and they limit and they send kids off in directions other than their studies and their building of humanity and community and connectedness. We have a family friend who's a guidance counselor in a middle school, and she talks about the difficulties that she has had because of cell phones. Because in the past, if a kid was in the middle of a skirmish or some kind of a disagreement in school, they would go home and would have the afternoon and the evening and the overnight hours to just put it away and forget about it. They'd come back to school fresh, and she said sometimes kids would come back to school in the old days and not even remember why they were upset with someone. They'd see them and think, I don't remember why I was upset with them. But she said with technology now, it is impossible for kids to get away from that continuing conversation and angst and maybe alienation and worse because of the technology of the cell phones. And then the parents get involved, and then the neighborhoods get involved, and then sometimes religious leaders get involved, anybody that sees this footprint. And so there's frustration that comes because of technology, but there are also beautiful, wonderful things that can happen if we harness that energy for good. This morning's gospel lesson was about people who are lost, sheep who are lost, coins who are lost, and you know that the next section of this chapter 15 of Luke is the story of the prodigal son, where a family was broken apart and there was a welcoming home. It's an incredible story, especially for people who live in families that are estranged, especially on a day when we think about grandparents. We know our family stories and we know some estrangements. But this call for us to go after the lost, to welcome them home, to pursue and encourage and open up hospitality, to open up our arms, to open up our hearts and our minds when there has been some separation for whatever reason, is important for us to think through. At first, we just think that the sheep went off on its own, But if we think about it a little bit longer, when we think about our particular culture and context, we know that sometimes people are separated from the group, not because of something that they did, but because they were pushed out, or they were hurled or pulled in a way that set them apart from the community, from the herd, from the common good, from the people who know that we are intended to belong to each other. And I wonder sometimes when you think about this separation and these differences, if indeed it is individuals who are choosing to be apart, or people choosing to push them out, or sometimes, as we know, institutions and systems and people in power are the ones that create these chasms, that create the scenarios where people are no longer with, but they're pushed, they're separated out, they're maybe tossed away, forgotten, disrespected. Well, this Luke story invites us to think about today, right? The scriptures are always inviting us to think about how is this applicable today? What is the message in this for me now? We look at the history and we look at the line of people who have been hearing and feeling these stories, and we wonder, so what about now? How will this impact the way that I live, the way that I understand my role, my piece, my function in this life of community, in this world spread around, spread apart? And so we look at Scripture as it looks at us. We see it as a mirror, and it invites us to look deeply at who we are, about the things that we believe, the things that we do, the actions that we take, the things that we don't believe, the things that we don't do, the things that we don't say, and encourages us to be honest and authentic and to try to move forward with faithfulness and with each other, trying to keep as many of us together as we can at any given moment. We recognize the role of mercy. We recognize the role of grace. We recognize the role of forgiveness and gentleness. And we also know that it can be hard work to try to keep people together, to try to create a space where in our diversity we can focus more on our unity and our connection. And so we are invited to think about when we have pushed people out, when we have been the ones who are lost, as we remember the people in the paths that have brought us back. And as we go a little step further, as we pull in the reading from 1 Timothy that Michelle shared with us, the early church trying to live out these calls, trying to live out these lessons that Jesus continues to teach us through the Gospels. Because what happens in this letter of 1 Timothy is someone is recognizing and being honest about the fact that they, in the past, were the ones who were persecuting, the ones who were blaspheming, the ones who were disbelieving, the ones who were caught up in violence. They were the ones who were hurting people and pushing people out and persecuting. They were the ones who thrived on violence. But in this story, they're talking about how they were brought back into the fold, how the Holy was patient with them, how they learned to be gracious and forgiving, how they felt the mercy of God upon them, and how they allowed it to change the trajectory of their lives, to move in a direction that brought people together and set people free. It talks about patience there, and sometimes we have to trust and know that the Holy will help people return. But there are other times when we recognize that we can't be patient, that it's an opportunity and responsibility in the moment to speak up, to do something, to try to bend that moral arc of the universe, not to just wait and sit by without power and our privilege just staying quiet, but to be present in ways that will help move things forward. And so I think we're invited today with these particular readings that we didn't choose, but were given to us in the lectionary, the 3-year cycle of readings. I think what we're invited to do is to think not only about where we have been involved, where we have been lost or found, where we have brought people back in, but we're also supposed to, I think, recognize where there are people who are doing this persecution, where there are people who are engaging in this violence, where there are people who are forgetting about the call to belong to each other, and we need to speak up. I love the word empathy. I try to live the ways of empathy. We come to worship because we want to feel that holiness, because we want to feel that love and grace. We want to be steeped in mercy and kindness and gentleness so that we can go out into the world to try to affect the world to be more in line with those gifts. But it can be hard when we see things and hear things and we want to speak up, but we're not sure what to say or to do. Our lives are a witness, but sometimes it takes more than that. Sometimes we need to be love that's louder. Pope Leo, leaning on our Catholic friends today, Pope Leo recently said, "Do not be afraid. Be sprouts of peace where the seed of hatred and resentment is growing. Be weavers of unity where polarization and enmity prevail. Be the voice of those who have no voice to ask for justice and dignity. Be light and salt where the flame of faith and the taste for life are fading." I love that Pope Leo starts with "do not be afraid." So many characters in Scripture, so many angels in the Scriptures say to us, do not be afraid, because there's cause for fear. We see what happens when people speak up sometimes, when they try to be prophetic, when they try to speak the truth to power, when they try to hold up a mirror to someone else. We sometimes see the fallout of that, and so we can be afraid, and we can be brave, and we can take encouragement from each other, and we can think about this story of Luke welcoming people back in, modeling ourselves after this Jesus story, modeling ourselves after the holy that welcomes people in, even modeling ourselves after the one who speaks in 1 Timothy saying, I have made mistakes in the past. I have been a persecutor. I have been a blasphemer. I have been one who has been moving toward violence, but I want to move in another direction. And I want to encourage others to do the same thing. I want to hold up a mirror to them. I want to reflect to others what I hear, what I see, what I experience from them, because I want us to all try to belong, trying to be part of God's grace and welcome and weaving together of our difference and our connection. This morning's meditation at the top of the bulletin said, look into your own heart. Discover what it is that gives you pain, and then refuse under any circumstance whatsoever to inflict that pain on anybody else. And we're invited to tell people when they are inflicting pain, to find ways that they can hear, ways that they can receive, ways that they can be in conversation and dialogue, so that we can all mature, so that we can all be more rooted and grounded in this idea of loving and belonging and welcoming and hospitality and home for one another. Please pray with us. Holy One, there are models that we can look at to find gentleness and strength, to find perseverance and stamina, to find sweetness. And there are opportunities for us to see where people are moving away from you and from community and the common good. And you invite us to put some of that safety, some of that encouragement, some of that peace, some of that calm further and deeper to our roots and to the future that we dream of, into the ways that you encourage us to be community, assessing and evaluating and debating and discussing and finding coalescence and compromise so that we can move forward as a people. We are limited and we are powerful and have intention and incredible potential. And so, God, guide us into places where we can be honest with each other, where we can be honest with ourselves, where we can not only look in the mirror, but hold up a mirror for others, so that we can mature we can nurture each other, we can be more faithful in the ways that you invite us to belong to each other.